Hello everyone, I'm Christopher Carter. This is our introductory video for our course, Angels, Stars, Myth. I'm glad you're here with us. I want to start us off by just giving out a guiding question. Anytime that I start an inquiry, anytime that I'm about to do something new, anytime I'm about to dive into something, I like to start off with a guiding question. I want to know, what's my motivation here? Why am I doing this? So I've got a guiding question for this whole course called Angels, Stars, Myth that just goes something like this. If we were to pay attention to mythology, if we were to pay attention to the Mazzaroth, to the stars, to all of these things going on around us, if we were to take in all of that wealth of interaction, could that make our relationship with the heavenly realms, could that make our interaction with the heavenly realms, could that make our interaction with the angels even more meaningful than it is for us right now? That's where I'm coming from in this class, that if we were to dive into this rich history that we can find in mythology, if we were to incorporate that and incorporate the Mazzaroth and the stars and the cosmos and the heavens, and if we put those two worlds together, what would that do for the way that we relate to the angelic realm, and for that matter, for the whole heavenly realm? What would that do as far as the quality and the meaningfulness of our relationships with that whole angelic world? Now, I personally believe that humanity is on a journey into increasing relationship with the angelic world. I know that this is what the Godhead is experiencing every day, right? That the Father on the throne knows the angels really well. I believe it's part of us growing up into our calling as full revealed sons and daughters of the Lord. So could this bring even more meaning into that relationship with the heavens and with the angelic world? I believe that it can. I've seen this work in my own life. That's why I'm sharing it with you in this course. Now, that's our guiding question going forward. So let's address just a few things in our little introductory video here. When we talk about myth, what in the world are we talking about? So if you go around on, typical man on the street conversation, you go, what's myth to you? Myth is going to have like just a couple basic connotations for people. Myth is going to mean like a made up story, right? Or potentially it's going to be like a made up story about some things that maybe were true or weren't true, but like these stories of old, these mythological stories. I think everybody probably conjures up the Greek myths in their mind of Zeus and Poseidon and Hades and all these things. That's kind of where most people are coming from. But it's come to mean, in our modern verbiage, almost just like anything that really isn't true, some made up story. But really in practice, it's those stories that are coming from that time, that mythological period. Now, for the sake of our course here together, our journey together, myth for us is going to be history. It's just going to be a part of history that describes a world that doesn't seem to work like the world we live in today. And if you're thinking biblically about this, mythological history is really just pre-flood history. Once we get to Abraham, the historical record more or less tracks like the historical records we've been used to of the last couple thousand years. But man, you get a little bit before Abraham, you start to get into that antediluvian world, which is just a fun word to say, antediluvian. Use that in a sentence whenever you're ready. When you start to get into that antediluvian pre-flood world, man, history takes on a different connotation. And it's an interesting period of time. It's this moment where all these stories about spiritual beings and their interactions with mankind. And if you're thinking, yeah, I've read those Greek myths and they're not great, I'm with you. I get what you're saying here. But there's something to be grasped from the richness of that mythological history. If something was going on then in that pre-flood era, right, where these spiritual beings are coming and going, and maybe it's not good, and of course a lot of it wasn't. Maybe that's where a lot of evil was going on in the world because those were spiritual beings that were fallen, that sort of thing. Listen, for all of that stuff that happened that was negative, all of that fallen angelic interaction that we could probably look at as mythological, that fell from something true and right and holy. It didn't originate bad. It became bad. So there is definitely something that we can sort of steal or steal back, or maybe the word there is redeem, from all of that mythological history in order to find out what the truth was about this world of spiritual beings, which we would really think of as the angelic world. Now, this is a big part of our class, is gathering what we can from that mythological world, and not just from that, but from the cosmos, from the stars, from God's cosmic clock. So here's where this part comes in. If we're talking about the stars, and we're talking about the Mazzaroth, those 12 constellations, right? If you've ever heard me talk about the stars in the heavens, or if you're a student of history, and if you're neither of those things, don't worry, we're going to talk about this in this class. All that cosmic clock, all that beauty of the firmament, it's not like what we're looking at is just flaming balls of gas thousands of light years away. And this is where I'm going to just pull a quote from C.S. Lewis, because if anyone got the connection between mythology and the stars and the angels and that realm, that heavenly realm, I think Lewis really was onto something. But in one of his Chronicles of Narnia stories, he's got one of the kids in the story talking about a star, and they go, aren't stars just flaming balls of gas, millions of, miles away or whatever? And the other character in the story says, listen, in your world, that may be what they're made up of, but that's certainly not what they are. Now, just the biblical history is rich with the stars in the heavens, because it gives us this picture that the stars have voice, that it's not just inanimate objects up there, but when we're looking at the stars, we're seeing a reality of spiritual beings that are up there, the stars, the planets, the constellations. It wasn't to any observer before just a few hundred years ago. Those pictures weren't just objects that were out there in space somewhere. It was a spiritual reality filled with spiritual beings. Now, you're probably already connecting the dots here, that there's a reason why we're approaching our interaction with the angels with this mythological component and with this cosmos star, Mazzaroth component, because we're going to put these things together and see what we can grow in and how that's going to fuel and shape our interaction with the angelic world. This is what we're going to be doing in this course, just so you know. I'm going to walk through each of these heavenly bodies. I mean, as many as we can cover in 8 classes. And if we don't get it done in 8, we do an extra one, that's okay too. But as many as we can cover in 8 classes, we're going to go through the constellations, some stars, some planets. The sun and the moon are going to get thrown in there too. We're going to take those heavenly objects, and then we're going to meld that with what can be gleaned in a holy, Christ-centered way from this world of mythology. And when we take these two things and put it together, I think something really fantastic happens. And it's the thing that I think always takes place when we connect ourselves with a rich human history that spans back thousands of years of story, thousands of years of growth, thousands of years of interacting with the spiritual world, with the heavenly world. I think when we limit ourselves to just, I don't know, maybe the last couple hundred years of Protestant Christianity, or even the last couple hundred years of Catholic Christianity, and then someone comes along and brings up like myth or the stars or the Mazzaroth, and we go, I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know if there's spiritual beings and those things. I think if God wanted us to know the myths, he would have put them in the scriptures. Like those kinds of ideas, right? When we just sort of only look at the slice of the pie that's just the last couple hundred years, I feel like we're missing so much of the story that God has been telling between God's self and mankind that spans back thousands of years. So something really special happens when we incorporate all of that story. Now, just follow me here for a minute. When we take the richness of all of those thousands of years of human story and we apply it to where we are today, and we can see even the trend of how our interaction with the angelic world has become closer and closer and closer with each passing century, with each passing millennia, with each passing cosmic age. And then when we take all that human story and we bring it to where we are now, on the cusp of taking an even greater step into a relationship with the angelic world that is very similar to what the Godhead has in the heavens, because God is wanting us to grow up into what God is experiencing every day. That's what he wants for us, to grow up into the image in which we were created. So if you're following me here, we're going to take the mythology, we're going to take the Mazzaroth and the stars, we're going to put all that rich history together. We're going to see this world full of spiritual beings, which we would call the angelic world. And I suspect that is going to bring so much more meaning to our interaction with the angels. Could it be that we will see them completely differently? We'll see them in a different light. We'll see them with different functions. And maybe just using the eyes of our heart, we'll actually see them better too. Because we won't just be pulling from these last couple hundred years of Christian thought. You know, the standard picture of the angel, the white robe and the white rings, and maybe he's holding, did I say rings? White wings, maybe holding a spear, that sort of idea. I think our picture of them is going to become so much more vibrant than we've ever imagined. And that is going to bring us into deeper relationship all by itself. And deeper relationship is going to bring us even more into this picture of God's sons and daughters being revealed on the earth. In each one of these courses that we're going to do together, I'm going to pick out some heavenly bodies from the Mazzaroth, some of those spiritual beings that we're seeing in that reality. I'm going to talk about the mythology that links to those heavenly bodies. And then we are going to have encounters in each one of these classes in this course together. We're going to have some encounters with these spiritual beings, with the entire angelic world. And I'm looking forward to doing this with you. I'm glad you're here. I'm looking forward to every bit of it. As always, if you have questions or comments during the course of this Angels, Stars, Myth course, reach out to me. chris@discovertheheavens.org is my email. And I'm looking forward to doing this with you. Glad we're doing it together. And I'll see you in the next video.